those of you that are here that know me, and I think there's a few of you, if you ask a question that should have an answer that's that long, you get an answer that's
not this, but that's what I'm here for. I'll help you with that.
okay, and I'll look to you to do that. I didn't go to school. I didn't go to school. I learned on my own. Again, the book thing. Back to the library. Every single book. If you go back to the Calgary Public Library, if any of those books are even still on the shelf, I guarantee any of the books that were published before 1975 are well worn. And there's one. I think it might be the 5th edition or 4th edition of the Corson book. There's a big let's go on one of the pages. Only one.
That was yours.
That was mine. So I learned through books. I learned by doing. I learned by experimenting and doing all these different things. And I learned by mistakes, making mistakes, tons of mistakes. And
let me ask you something about that, because that was one thing I wrote about shortly ago. People of our generation had to do footwork, real footwork. We had to get in a car and go somewhere, or get out of our houses to be able to go, because information was very difficult for us to find. And the new generations it's as close as a mouse click, a lot of it. And so, but of course that information is the same information everybody else can get. How do you think that changed, let me frame the question this way, the way research is the amount of information that's available, and that it's always the same information to the same people. How do you think that affects the outcome of the way people do makeup now?
right. Well, if I draw, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think if we draw an analogy to magic, for example, you could say that we've kind of laid bare the way we do the tricks, in a sense, right?
Agreed.
And that's part of what I think you're alluding to. On the one hand, I think it's something we have to manage very carefully, and I also think the studios, I think the distributors and the makers of the films, in their marketing, have to be very careful about how much they give away, for good or for bad. On the other hand, that's allowed this to happen. It's allowed this show to happen. It's allowed all of us to build this, like I say, this more mature culture for our craft. So I think the availability of the information is a great thing, just to have it accessible. Like you say, a mouse click away. I tell a story. I had buying foam latex. I went to the library and I found the yellow pages for the Los Angeles area, and I pulled it out and I looked up makeup and foam latex. That's how I found Schramm foam.
Oh, I got Charlie. He was still there.
Charlie Schramm. So it's a very different animal, but I think we have to manage it. I think it's something we need to be very aware of, and I think you're going to see a bit of a backlash too in that. I think the amount of material. This is a good example. If I could speak for a moment about Summit, the company that produced. Now, I know that there's a couple Summit people here. I know you flew up. I know you're here. You're on the QT. You got to make sure I don't show any pictures that I shouldn't show.
You think they're really here?
Oh yeah, there's somebody here. You don't have to identify yourself. Don't worry about it. But I know you're in the audience somewhere. Summit is a huge company. They've made so much money on this franchise that it's absolutely unbelievable. And they've managed their information flow in terms of what they've put out so carefully and so well. I think in some ways it's been it's amazing no matter how you look at it, but in some ways it's ridiculous, and in another sense it's absolutely brilliant marketing. And I'm not sure which side of the fence I'm on. But it makes it difficult for us sometimes. I wanted to show you some great pictures from behind the scenes. I wanted to show you some clips. I had a lot of material I wanted to bring to show you today, and I just couldn't get clearance through Summit. And you had Norma, for example, the last show in Toronto, and she ran against the same roadblocks. Now, granted, this isn't a new thing. I mean, sometimes we're not really, it's a tough thing to get that material and expose it to a public before the release of the film. The film comes out June 30th, as you saw in the trailer. I'm hoping maybe to have some material available for, if you want it for the magazine or for exposure down to the LA show, because that happens only a few days before. I think they'll be a little more lenient.
But do you think that even if you showed what you wanted to show here, do you think that they would sell one less ticket for Eclipse?
One less?
You think they'd even lose one ticket sale on Eclipse if you showed that? how would it affect them?
Yeah, well, no, of course not. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this is the issue, is that we both know. I mean, the reason with a show like this, with this venue, you people sitting in the audience, if I'm showing you clips, if I'm getting you excited about the film that's coming up and I'm talking about it, I'm promoting their film. I'm making you want to see that picture. So for that company to actually not pony up, it's a bit divergent from really what makes common sense, I think. I think we all kind of have a good idea of the way the business works. They need to promote, but Summit has taken this tack where they've so carefully pulled back. I think what they're trying to do is create this rarity of substance. You know, it's like, oh, we're just clamoring for, and you know, like I say, you can't really argue with it because look at this phenomenon. I don't know how many of you, I think I'm getting the idea that most of you are probably makeup fans rather than Eclipse fans. There may be some twihards here. Are any of you, don't be embarrassed, put up your hand if you like the movies or if you're a fan of the books. I'm not expecting there's going to be too many of you.
3 or 4.
3 or 4. Oh, they sort of start to slowly go up.
Let's ask it this way. Did you come here only because of Twilight? Let's see if there's anybody that has answer that. I think you're right. Nobody came here specifically as like, I'm a Twilight person and I have to be here because Charles Porlier is going to talk about a movie. They want to see you.
Right. Well, thank you.
Talk about your start in there and how the industry changed in that way. And I know that the sand's going to run out of the hourglass so fast that we could probably talk here for 5 hours about this, and even not even scratch the surface of many wonderful projects that you've been a part of. But I do know that, let's look at a couple of landmarks in your career, and then we can talk about some things that are upcoming. I'm sure one of the turning points was when you were able to get into the makeup game here, the changes, the kind of projects you can work on. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
What show did you get your days on?
Well, I started out, when I came out, essentially what happened with me in Vancouver is I grew up in Calgary, as I mentioned. I'm really, Russell, I'm sorry about the Flames. But you know what? Go Canucks. Can I tell you? Yeah, my son is here, Sebastian. I'm sorry I had to say that, but I know you're a dyed-in-the-wool Flames fan, but you know, you got to pull for the whole team, the home team, buddy. When I started makeup, I started in Calgary. I was fortunate in Calgary that even at that time, early in my career, I was traveling a fair bit. I'd go to Toronto to do a picture, I'd come out here, I'd go to Victoria. I actually got a lot of experience in LA. Under the table, I used to go down with friends every once in a while, and I'd spend 3 or 4 months until my money ran out trying to get little jobs, you know, just sweeping floors and doing all that stuff, just being exposed, as we all tried to do. So in the late 70s and early 80s, I had much of that experience, which helped me tremendously. And essentially, in Calgary, I got hired for this job, this television series by Stephen J. Cannell called Stingray, with the Canadian as the main actor, Nick Mancuso. And we shot that in Calgary. The problem was that was in '86, during Expo '86. The plan had been to come to Vancouver, start shooting in Vancouver originally, but there were no hotels. All the same problems that manifest themselves at the Olympics, no hotels, difficult access to the roads and shooting locations, all those kind of things. They decided to start shooting in Calgary. I got hired as Nick's makeup artist, this is his personal makeup artist on that picture. I was Stephen Cannell's third employee hired in Canada, actually. I hired the transportation coordinator and the location person, first location manager, and I was number 3. And Nick had been a bit of an issue for the first 6 months or the first 6 episodes they shot in LA. He was hard to manage. And you mentioned shoot from the hip. I'm a shoot from the hip guy. For better or for worse, I shoot my mouth off sometimes. I say things sometimes that are appropriate, sometimes that are inappropriate, always striving for the best interest of everybody, but nonetheless, I do put my foot in my mouth sometimes. And one of the things that worked on that show was that I said to Nick, when he was being, let's just put it this way, unprofessional, although those weren't the words that I used. I'd walk into his trailer and I said, this is not going to work today, you know. You've got all these people out there outside. So I became invaluable to the producers because the producers were scared to knock on the door of his trailer. And what happened was that they basically said he's invaluable, but they can Vancouver. I came up to Vancouver, the snow started flying Calgary, I think, started shooting here. That's where I started. I got my days on Stingray, and then I moved over onto this thing called Starbuck, and then I moved over onto Wise Guy.